Welcome to the Bookworm Duo, where we explore a variety of books. Let's get started. Today, we are undertaking a monumental deep dive into what Walter Isaacson calls the greatest sentence ever written. And you definitely know it. It's the second sentence of the Declaration of Independence.
It really is. It's those 55 words that, they basically define the entire American ethos. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
That they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
That's the one.
So our mission for you, the listener, is to sort of treat this sentence like a time capsule. We're going to pull it apart, look at the specific edits made back in 1776.
Yeah, and trace the philosophical battles that were fought over, literally every single word. And then we have to get into the contradictions, the huge contradictions the founders were facing.
Exactly. So let's start at the very beginning. Thomas Jefferson's initial draft, it didn't actually have the phrase we all know.
No, it didn't. His original wording was, "We hold these truths to be sacred and undeniable."
Sacred. Wow. That has a completely different ring to it. So how did we get from, a religious basis for rights to one based on pure intellect?
Well, that's the earliest, and you could argue the most critical revision. And we can thank Benjamin Franklin for it. The pragmatic old printer.
What did he do?
He took his pen, used these thick printer's backslash marks, and just crossed out sacred. And right above it, he wrote in self-evident.
That one edit.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a profound shift, isn't it? It moves the entire source of authority.
Completely. Instead of rights being granted by, religious dogma or some king's divine decree, they are now rooted in reason.
And self-evident wasn't just a word he liked the sound of. It was a technical term.
A very technical philosophical term. And it reflects his close friendship with the Scottish philosopher David Hume. Franklin had actually visited Hume in Edinburgh back in 1771. They spent weeks talking about this exact stuff, natural rights, the stirrings of revolution.
Which brings us to Hume's fork. Yeah. Right? Can you break that down for us?
Sure. Hume basically split all knowledge into two categories. First, you have synthetic truths. These are things you have to go out and, empirically observe to see if they're true.
Like saying London is bigger than Philadelphia.
Yeah.
You have to go check the facts.
Exactly. But then, and this is the key part for the Declaration, you have the analytic truths.
The self-evident ones.
The self-evident ones. These are true by reason and definition alone. Hume's classic example is all bachelors are unmarried.
Right, you don't need to interview 1,000 bachelors to confirm it. It's true by definition.
Precisely. And here's where it gets really interesting for you listening. By calling equality self-evident, the founders were saying that everyone is created equally free and independent by definition.
They had to claim it was true by reason, because if they just looked at the world around them, well, it obviously wasn't true in practice. People were not equal in talents or wealth or status.
It was a statement of aspiration, of political philosophy, not a description of reality. But this focus on reason immediately bumped up against, more traditional religious views.
I noticed that. Because just a few words later, the divine comes roaring back in. Jefferson's original draft said rights were derived from that equal creation.
And that was replaced with endowed by their creator with rights.
Who made that change?
It was most likely John Adams. He was a bit more of a conventional Unitarian. He wanted a clear nod to divine providence to make sure these rights were anchored in both enlightenment, reason, and a higher power.
So right there in that one sentence, you see the balancing act. Reason and faith side by side.
It's the tension that defines American political thought from day one.
Okay, let's look at the very first word, we. It sounds so simple, and it echoes the Constitution's we the people. What's the philosophical weight there?
Oh, it's immense. That one word, we, is a complete rejection of the divine right of kings. It establishes that authority comes from a social contract, from the people themselves.
And Jefferson was just soaking in all those Enlightenment thinkers who defined that idea.
Absolutely. You start with someone like Thomas Hobbes, who thought people only submit to government because life without it is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. But the founders, they preferred Locke.
Why Locke over Hum?
Because John Locke's version was more optimistic. He argued people don't just join society to escape being killed, they do it for comfortable, safe, and peaceable living. It's a deal for mutual prosperity.
So we isn't just about survival, it's about thriving together.
Exactly. And later you get Rousseau defining that we as the general will of the people. Jefferson was channeling all of that collective power in that single opening word.
Now we have to turn to the unavoidable contradiction that has haunted American history. All men are created equal.
Right.
Given this incredibly high philosophical bar they set for themselves, how? How restricted was that phrase in 1776?
In practice, incredibly restricted, the founders consciously, intentionally excluded huge parts of the population. Women, Native Americans, and of course, most glaringly, enslaved people.
The book has that amazing anecdote about Abigail Adams writing to John.
Yes. She urges him to remember the ladies when they're writing these new laws.
And his response is basically a polite laugh.
It's witty but totally dismissive. He writes back that they know better than to repeal our masculine systems. I mean, a serious debate about women's rights never even happened in Congress.
But the moral failure, of course, is slavery. In 1776, a fifth of the population, 500,000 people, were enslaved.
It's the original sin, sitting right there at the heart of this document about freedom. Some tried to get around it. George Mason, in the Virginia Declaration of Rights, he added this little clause.
What was it?
He said equality only applies to people when they enter into a state of society. It was a legalistic way to exclude slaves.
But Jefferson, for all his personal hypocrisy in enslaving over 600 people, his original draft was surprisingly forceful on this.
It was. He called the slave trade a cruel war against human nature and blamed the king for forcing it on the colonies.
And Congress cut that part out.
They did, but it shows the struggle. I mean, 41 of the 56 signers were slave owners, but the person who really shows the potential for change, the moral arc, is Benjamin Franklin.
The pragmatist again. Yep. He started out owning 2 slaves himself.
He did.
Yeah.
But he evolved. He freed them, became a passionate abolitionist, and at age 81 was the president of the Pennsylvania Abolition Society.
And his final essay, The Algiers Parody.
Just brilliant, devastating satire. He took the exact arguments a congressman named James Jackson was using to defend slavery in America, and he put them in the mouth of an official from Algiers defending the enslavement of white Christians.
He just perfectly exposed the hypocrisy.
It was his final mic drop, a powerful statement that the fight for real equality had only just begun.
Let's circle back to the philosophy, to that word creator.
Mm-hmm.
We said it was a compromise, but the concept of God here wasn't exactly traditional, was it? It was based in deism.
That is such an essential point. Deism was the creed for many of these Enlightenment guys. Jefferson, Franklin, even Locke. They believed in a God who created the universe and its laws.
The laws of nature and of nature's God.
Right. But a God who then stepped back. No supernatural intervention, a clockmaker God.
And Jefferson took this skepticism to a real extreme. The story about his Bible is amazing.
It's audacious. He literally took a razor and glue and cut out every single miracle, the resurrection, anything supernatural. All that was left were Jesus's moral teachings. He even told his nephew to question with boldness even the existence of a God.
So even Adams, the guy who probably added creator, wasn't a traditionalist. He was a Unitarian who saw God as the great architect of the universe.
They found their common ground in a deistic God that supported natural rights. Even Franklin, on his deathbed, when a minister asked him about Jesus' divinity, he just sidestepped it.
What did he say?
He said he had some doubts, but then added, with that classic Franklin wit, "I expect soon an opportunity of knowing the truth with less trouble."
Perfect. Okay, let's get to the triad of rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We all know Locke's original 3 were life, liberty, and property. Why did Jefferson make that change?
It was a very deliberate substitution. Property was central for Locke, no question. But Jefferson wanted to broaden the scope. Pursuit of happiness is just a simpler, more powerful way to express the right to seek fulfillment and personal achievement.
It's more aspirational.
It is, and he borrowed it, partly. George Mason's Virginia Declaration had a clunkier version about pursuing and obtaining happiness and safety. Jefferson just streamlined it, made it beautiful.
And that little debate over inalienable versus unalienable?
Oh, that was just a copy editing thing. Jefferson wrote inalienable. Adams copied it as unalienable. They were used interchangeably back then. They meant the same thing. Rights that are so core to your being, they can't be taken away or even given away.
Which brings us to the core relevance of this today. How does this sentence, built on all this conflict and compromise, become the thing that's supposed to bind a diverse nation? How does it define our common ground?
That idea of common ground is so important. And for the founders, it wasn't just a philosophical idea. They were literally building commons.
You mean like the Boston Common?
Exactly. It goes back to the old medieval idea of land everyone could use, but they transformed that into the communiter bona, the goods held in common.
And Franklin was the master of this. His little club, the Leather Apron Club, they basically built Philadelphia's infrastructure. The first Public library, a fire corps, a hospital.
He was all about the practical application of the common good. His library's motto was Communiter bona profundere deum est. To pour forth benefits for the common good is divine.
So even Locke's idea of private property had a limit built into it, right?
It did, the famous Lockean proviso. You can take from nature and make it your private property, but only where there is enough and as good left in common for others.
The book argues that today, that common ground is eroding. And with it, the American dream.
Yeah, that dream, which was really defined in the 1930s, was about being able to reach your full potential no matter where you started. And the example used was the Library of Congress, a shared space for everyone.
But that shared space is shrinking. The book calls it the skyboxification of America.
A great term, and you see it everywhere. VIP entrances, gated communities, and online in our media echo chambers, where algorithms make sure we never have to talk to anyone who disagrees with us. It's fracturing that common ground.
And this connects to a backlash against a certain kind of elite. Jefferson himself, for all his populism, wanted a natural aristocracy where the best geniuses were raked from the rubbish annually.
That kind of thinking over time created a lot of resentment, especially for the, 62% of people who don't finish college and feel like the system sees them as failures.
And the numbers back up that feeling of being left behind. For kids born in the 1980s, their chance of doing better financially than their parents has now dropped below 50%.
Right, so the pursuit of happiness feels statistically harder to achieve. And that is the fuel for the populist anger we're seeing.
Okay, let's end by going back to the room where it happened. The final dramatic days before the Declaration was published. Thomas Paine's pamphlet, Common Sense, had already whipped up huge support for independence.
It was a massive bestseller, and so when the Continental Congress finally voted for independence on July 2nd, the draft was ready, but then the edits began.
The mutilations, as a very unhappy Jefferson called them.
Yes. Most painfully for him, they cut out his entire section condemning slavery. He was distraught, and Franklin, being Franklin, stepped in to console him with a joke.
The joke about the sign maker.
Exactly. John Thompson, the Hatter. His friends kept editing his sign down and down until all that was left was his name and a picture of a hat. The point being, the core message survived.
And then the printing itself was an act of defiance.
John Dunlap, the printer, worked all through the night of July 4th. He produced 200 of those beautiful broadside copies using the Caslon typeface that Franklin himself had championed.
And just days later, it's read to Washington's troops in New York. And the crowd goes and pulls down a 2-ton statue of King George III. The words immediately became action.
And when they all gathered to sign it, John Hancock said, "We must all hang together," which led to Franklin's unforgettable, very dark, and very witty reply.
Yes, we must indeed all hang together, or most assuredly we shall all hang separately.
It's the perfect summary of their situation, unity or death.
And Franklin's whole life was about building that unity, that common ground, donating to every church, even a synagogue, even a fund for a Muslim preacher's pulpit.
He truly believed that the pursuit of happiness was something you do together through shared work. And that challenge is exactly the same one we face today.
So what's the final thought from this deep dive for you, the listener?
I think the challenge is still striking that balance. How do we build institutions and, media, social media, whatever, that actually connect us to that shared common ground that Franklin and Jefferson dreamed of? Instead of just inflaming the resentments that pull us apart, that's how we keep fighting for those self-evident truths.
Thanks for joining us. Subscribe for more bookish adventures and hit that like button if you enjoyed the ride. Don't forget to share the knowledge, spread the word.